We're also watching this map right here in the headlines that come out of Venezuela. The big headline, of course, is a bipartisan call by lawmakers in the United States wanting to know if deadly U.S. boat strikes rose to the level of a war crime. So let's set the scene just a little bit here. As you look at this video here behind me, the Washington Post report claims a U.S. strike in September left 2 survivors. And to comply with a directive from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to, quote, kill them all, a commander ordered a second strike to kill the survivors. Well, now Democratic Senator Tim Kaine joining others demanding answers.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international laws about the way you treat people who are in that circumstance. And so this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true. And the questions that we've been asking for months are, give us the evidence that the folks on board were really narco traffickers.
So let's go live to CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, you heard that senator there saying, give us the evidence. Where are we where this is concerned, where evidence is concerned?
Well, the evidence is still forthcoming, and that's what they've been demanding. But we're talking about the legality, the question of the legalities of these strikes, especially what the military calls a double tap, going back around after hitting a boat. Pardon me while I refer to my notes, because under the law of armed conflict, this is Geneva Convention rules, I've summarized it. It's prohibited to attack shipwrecked combatants, surrendering personnel, anyone who is incapacitated or otherwise out of combat. Shipwreck survivors are explicitly protected under Geneva Convention rules and under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The individuals involved in this alleged second attack would be culpable and even charged with murder. So that's how serious this is. And then you have to decide where in the command chain that went up. So if Secretary Hegseth ordered that attack saying kill them all, and then he would be culpable for ordering it, but the people that would also be culpable are the ones who executed it. So, you know, this is why this is so important, and this is why lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are saying we need more evidence, and there hasn't been. They've been complaining to me, people that we've spoken to, even in and outside the Pentagon. They haven't been providing any of the evidence of what's on those boats, who are the people on those boats, where they were headed, what sort of weapon system was involved, probably a Reaper drone with Hellfire missiles. We saw that for ourselves. We were in Puerto Rico. So, you know, there are a lot of unanswered questions, and now there's an increasing demand to get information about those questions.
Well, and we understand, Charlie, it's also reportable that the president will hold a meeting today on the next steps in Venezuela. You just spent some time in Puerto Rico, as you mentioned. What can you tell us about how the U.S. is ramping up those military efforts there? Because the tensions, really, you could cut it with a knife.
Reed, there's no way to over-exaggerate what's happening in Venezuela and Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. They're preparing for war. That's what the Pentagon does anyway. It's kind of their day job. That's what they do. But what we saw in place, we saw F-35 stealth fighter jets in plain view. I told you we saw those Reaper drones, and they were armed with Hellfire missiles. This is all in Puerto Rico. We saw thousands of U.S. troops. That's maybe an exaggeration. We didn't see them all, but we understand that there are thousands of U.S. troops deployed in and around Puerto Rico and in the Caribbean Sea. In addition to that, the centerpiece of this, quote, strike package is the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. We know for a fact that F-18 fighter jets have been scrambled and flying off the deck. They've sort of been buzzing the coastline of Venezuela, including B-52s, which are also involved in this. There's something like 8 or 9 destroyers, maybe as many as 200 Tomahawk cruise missiles. So the point is, when the president walks into that room, surrounded by the people who would advise him, the military has done their job of putting into place the options for the commander-in-chief to then proceed. And yes, of course, a lot of this may be just bearing down pressure. When we talked the other day about closing Venezuela airspace, and the Venezuelans said, first of all, how do you close off the airspace? And, you know, calling the United States a colonialist for even trying that. So the stage is set, as it were. Again, not to over-dramatize it, the pieces are in place to give the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief any of the options, multiple options, of what they can do in that area if the decision is to launch land strikes inside Venezuela, which the president has hinted multiple times before.
Charlie D'Agata watching it all the pieces on the board, as it were. We appreciate you so much. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he has great confidence in Secretary Pete Hegseth. Here's what he had to say.
Number one, I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that. Not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine. And if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
You saying there's no second strike?
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it. But Pete said he did not order the death of those two men.
So let's talk more about this. The White House, where we find CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. So Olivia, President Trump will be holding a meeting on this very thing today. Next steps in Venezuela. So talk to us about what you think will happen, where Secretary Pete Hegseth will have to say there in that meeting. We understand he's attending that sit down.
Yeah, Reed, it's good to be with you. We do know this afternoon at the White House there's going to be a meeting with the top brass of the Pentagon. That includes Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, as well as some of his undersecretaries, some of his top advisors. We also know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is also expected to be in that meeting. And you're right, they're going to talk about the next steps of what is going on in Venezuela, or what could potentially happen. And as Charlie really expertly laid out there, we have seen the mass movement of U.S. forces, of naval capabilities, of striking capabilities move into the region in the Caribbean Sea, right off the coast of Venezuela, really being able to present President Trump with a variety of options should he choose it. There's still questions, though, about whether this president is interested in doing land strikes, perhaps land invasion, troops on the ground, and ultimately regime change. Of course, they have called Maduro a war criminal, charged him with crimes, has said his regime is illegitimate in Venezuela. But all of this talk, and it's time to see whether or not there will be some type of action. So we are expecting that meeting here later today at the White House. We'll be tracking to see if there's any sort of decision made from it.
All right, and so let's talk about a little bit about what Charlie D'Agata was talking relative to the president talking about closing off Venezuelan airspace. Where do we stand on that, and what's the reasoning behind it?
Well, mostly it came from a Truth Social post from President Trump over the weekend, where he said that the airspace around or on Venezuelan airspace and surrounding airspace should be closed. And the message was directed to airlines, pilots, human traffickers, drug smugglers, pretty much anyone who is around that airspace. The president said it should be closed. Of course, he does not have the unilateral ability to close the airspace over another country. But normally, when you make such a suggestion like that, it usually means there's something imminent that's going to happen. Potentially a strike. We saw this with the land invasion of Russia into Ukraine. There was pretty much dead airspace in the hours leading up to that, which suggested that there was going to be movement. However, there has not been any movement from this president. We do not know what is going to happen next. But take a listen to what he told Arweesha Jiang when she asked him about this last night on his flight home from Palm Beach after spending Thanksgiving there. She asked him very specifically about why he would call for this airspace to be closed.
Mr. President, on Venezuela, can you tell us more about why the airspace above Venezuela should be considered closed?
Because we consider Venezuela to be not a very friendly country. They send millions of people, really, and probably a number in excess of that. And a lot of those people shouldn't be in our country, from jails, from gangs, from drug dealers, from all of the people that came into our country shouldn't have been in our country, causing a lot of problems.
Does your warning
and drugs.
Does your warning mean that an airstrike is imminent, or should we not read it that way?
Don't read anything into it.
So there you hear the president. Don't read into his Truth Social post about asking the airspace to be closed, but we're certainly watching closely given the fact that there is that meeting happening today at the White House here with those top leaders from the Pentagon.
Olivia Rinaldi reporting live outside the White House. Thank you so much.